Day 10. Managing your emotional responses. One of the most valuable lessons a person can learn is that life is influenced not only by what happens to them, but by how they respond to what happens to them. At first glance, this idea may seem simple. Yet when we look closely at the challenges people face in their careers, relationships, finances, and personal development, we often discover that the events themselves are only part of the story. The other part lies in the emotional responses those events trigger. Two people can experience the same setback and walk away with completely different outcomes. One may view the situation as a temporary obstacle and continue moving forward. The other may become overwhelmed by frustration, disappointment, or self-doubt, and remain stuck long after the event has passed. The difference is not always found in the circumstances. More often, it is found in the way emotions are understood and managed. Many people grow up believing that emotions simply happen to them. They experience anger, fear, disappointment, anxiety, or frustration, and assume that these feelings must automatically dictate their behavior. As a result, emotions often become drivers rather than sources of information. A difficult conversation triggers anger, and words are spoken that cannot be taken back. A setback creates discouragement, and an important goal is abandoned. A moment of fear appears, and an opportunity is ignored. The emotional experience feels so powerful in the moment that it seems impossible to separate the feeling from the action. Yet emotional maturity begins when we recognize that emotions and actions are not the same thing. An emotion is information. A response is a choice. Understanding this distinction can change the way you approach almost every area of your life. Imagine driving a car and noticing a warning light appear on the dashboard. The light serves an important purpose. It provides information that deserves attention. However, the warning light is not the problem itself. It is simply a signal. Emotions function in a similar way. Fear may signal uncertainty. Anger may signal that a boundary feels threatened. Sadness may signal loss. Frustration may signal a gap between expectations and reality. The emotion itself is not necessarily good or bad. Its purpose is to communicate information. The challenge arises when we react to emotions automatically, without taking time to understand what they are trying to tell us. Consider how often people make important decisions during emotionally charged moments. A person may resign from a job during a period of frustration, end a relationship during an argument, or abandon a meaningful goal after a temporary setback. In many cases, the decision is not driven by careful reflection, but by an emotional state that eventually passes. This is why learning to create space between feeling and action is so important. That space may last only a few seconds, but it can dramatically change the quality of our decisions. When an emotion arises, there is tremendous value in pausing and asking a simple question. What am I actually feeling right now? Surprisingly, many people struggle to answer this question with precision. They know they feel uncomfortable, but they have difficulty identifying whether the discomfort is fear, disappointment, embarrassment, insecurity, or something else entirely. Developing emotional awareness requires expanding your emotional vocabulary. The more accurately you can identify what you are experiencing, the more effectively you can respond to it. For example, there is a significant difference between feeling anxious and feeling unprepared. There is a significant difference between feeling rejected and feeling disappointed. There is a significant difference between feeling fear and feeling uncertainty. When emotions remain vague, they often appear larger and more intimidating than they really are. When they are understood clearly, they become easier to manage. Another important aspect of emotional management involves recognizing that emotions are temporary by nature. This can be difficult to remember when a feeling is particularly intense. during moments of anger, sadness, or anxiety, it can seem as though the emotional state will last forever. Yet if you reflect on your own experiences, you will likely recognize that even your strongest emotions eventually faded. The problem is that many people make permanent decisions based on temporary feelings. They assume that because they feel discouraged today, they will always feel discouraged. Because they feel uncertain now, they conclude they are incapable. Because they feel overwhelmed, they convince themselves that the challenge is impossible. Time often reveals a different reality. The emotion passes, the perspective changes. What seemed unbearable becomes manageable. This does not mean emotions should be ignored. Suppressing feelings rarely produces healthy outcomes. Emotions deserve attention and acknowledgement. The goal is not suppression. The goal is regulation. There is a profound difference between feeling an emotion and being controlled by it. A person with strong emotional regulation still experiences frustration, disappointment, fear, and stress. The difference is that they have learned to experience these emotions without allowing them to dominate every decision. This skill becomes increasingly important as you pursue meaningful goals, because growth inevitably creates emotional discomfort. Every challenge introduces uncertainty. Every significant decision involves risk. Every ambitious goal includes moments where progress feels slower than expected. If emotional discomfort automatically causes you to stop, your growth will always be limited by your comfort zone. On the other hand, if you learn to tolerate temporary discomfort while continuing to move forward, your capacity for growth expands dramatically. This does not happen all at once. Like every skill we have discussed so far, emotional regulation develops through practice. It grows each time you pause before reacting. It grows each time you examine an emotion rather than obey it automatically. It grows each time you choose a thoughtful response instead of an impulsive one. Over time, these small moments accumulate. You become calmer during difficult conversations, more resilient during setbacks, more patient when progress feels slow, more confident in your ability to handle challenges. Perhaps most importantly, you begin trusting yourself. You no longer fear every uncomfortable emotion because you know you can experience it without being overwhelmed by it. You understand that emotions are part of being human, not obstacles to being successful. As you continue your journey, remember that emotional strength is not measured by the absence of emotion. It is measured by your ability to experience emotions without losing sight of your values, your goals, and the person you are trying to become. The strongest individuals are not those who never feel fear, frustration, or doubt. They are those who continue acting wisely, even when those emotions are present. Reflection questions. 1. Which emotions most often influence your decisions? 2. How do you typically respond when you feel stressed, frustrated, or disappointed? 3. Have you ever made an important decision based on a temporary emotional state? 4. What situations tend to trigger your strongest emotional reactions? 5. How might your life improve if you responded more intentionally to difficult emotions? Daily action step. The next time you experience a strong emotion today, pause before reacting. Take a few slow breaths and ask yourself, what am I feeling? What is this emotion trying to tell me? What response would align with the person I want to become? Allow yourself to observe the emotion before deciding how to act. Success affirmation. I acknowledge my emotions without being controlled by them. I respond thoughtfully, act intentionally, and trust my ability to handle life's challenges with clarity and strength.